1976, the arcade game Death Race was released, based off the movie Death Race 2000. The objective of this game is to run your car into fleeing gremlins on the screen. This game was so controversial at the time it led to the first study on the psychological effects of video games, and this is what the game that caused so much controversy looked like. Since Death Race, games have continued to push the limit on what you can and cannot put in a video game, leading some to ask the question, do video games cause violence? While scrolling through the news, you may have stumbled upon a headline or two discussing the latest school shooting and if it was caused by video games the killer played. It almost seems like a non-stop barrage of stories linking violence in our world to the violent video games we play. Let's take for example one of the most infamous shootings, the Columbine Massacre. For those of you who are unaware, in 1999, two students by the name of Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris opened fire at their high school, murdering 12 students and one teacher before committing suicide. This travesty brought up questions on the mental state of students, how safe schools are, and if there was any other causes for this rampage. While artists such as Marilyn Manson and the movie Natural Born Killers took some flack for the shooting, the media seemed to latch onto the story that the two teenagers played the video game Doom, and even in one of their home videos they claimed that the shooting would be just like the game. With this information, several media outlets pinned the entire shooting on the game. Looking back, most people consider that the amount of blame Doom received was at the least shoddy journalism and at the worst fear-mongering, because most experts have stated that Harris was a clinical psychopath and Klebold was depressed. Combine this with the fact that both students were bullied on a daily basis and you could start to see the red flags. This isn't to say that movies, music, and video games didn't affect them, since we'll never know for sure exactly what was going through their minds that day. But most seem to agree that these forms of media were just a smaller part of the bigger issue. But instead of stating this, many media outlets ran outlandish stories about how Doom corrupted the students' minds, and others went as far to claim that they trained for the shooting with custom maps, which is a claim that has absolutely no evidence to support it. Since then, video games have become more and more graphic every year, and many believe that they caused the massive amount of violence we face today. But is this actually true? A lot of studies do show a correlation with players of violent video games and violent tendencies, but here's where I find a problem with these studies. Many of these investigations simply find gamers and ask them to fill out a survey on what video games they play, then see if those games correlate with any antisocial behaviors. While at first this may seem like a sound way of measuring the effects games have on violence, you have to realize that many studies don't take into account that violent individuals may be more prone to play violent games. So rather than the correlation being that violent games create violent and antisocial individuals, these studies may actually just mean that violent and antisocial individuals are more likely to play violent games. While looking through some case studies, I stumbled across one that tries to combat this problem. In the study, they wanted to see if prosocial games directly linked to prosocial behavior and vice versa. So they devised a test where the subjects would play prosocial games such as World of Zoo, and have other participants play violent games such as Call of Duty. After 8 minutes of playtime, a person would pretend to accidentally drop a pen on the floor, and then see if the test subject would help pick it up. This test would try to show if playing a violent game would cause a person to be more hostile, which in this instance would be seen if they picked up the pen for the person. The final results show no clear correlation with the type of game being played and prosocial behaviors. This just goes to show that there has been no scientific consensus on what the actual effects video games have on people, but many still like to point out that with all these shootings and violent crimes recently, video games must be the cause. But has violence really gotten worse? In 1992, Mortal Kombat was released in arcades. The game was met with much success from gamers, but also disdain from others who were outraged by the violence. One feature to the game was the gruesome fatality moves. These graphics were so controversial at the time it led to the creation of the ESRB rating system. While many claim that real-life violence has gotten worse since these mature-rated games started to be played, is it really true? According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, from 1992 to 2011, homicides in the US have actually gone down by 49%. So since the invention of Mortal Kombat and all the other violent games preceding it, homicides in the US have nearly been cut in half. Now to be fair, some may counter this point by saying that there has been more school shootings yearly since violent video games picked up steam. And yes, while this is unfortunately true, we still have to look at the big picture. From 1980 to 2012, there was a total of 297 deaths due to school shootings in the US. Let's now compare this to the fact that in 1 year, 450 people died from falling out of bed in the US alone. With this statistic, many may ask why the news spends so much time reporting on school shootings while we never hear about bed fatalities. Well, with school shootings, we are dealing with the deaths of innocent children who are senselessly being murdered, so of course it's going to make more people outraged. But does that mean we must go on a witch hunt for everything that might have influenced these killers? All this isn't to say that video games don't have an effect on people, especially children, but that's why there's a rating system in place, so that you know what age group a game's intended for. It's also quite reasonable to assume that violent video games may have a bigger impact than music or movies on people. I say this because in music you hear about a person shooting someone. In movies you see the person actually getting shot, but in a video game you're the person pulling the trigger. What these effects are will continue to be debated, but most can agree that children and the mentally unstable should probably be kept away from Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto. While the media enjoys to point fingers at video games as the cause of many of these school shootings, there is another potential cause that they never seem to bring up, which is the media itself. Whenever a school shooting occurs, media outlets spend a massive amount of resources to cover the story, then continuously talk about every facet of the shooting through their papers, television stations, and websites. Many believe that all the attention these stories receive leads to copycat killers, who get ideas from the non-stop reporting. So perhaps news stations should take a closer look at themselves before pointing fingers at others. Now I know I'm going to receive a countless amount of comments claiming that I'm biased on the subject because I run a gaming channel, but I just want to point out that I don't play violent video games often here because those games rarely interest me, and I'd much rather play Mario or Zelda. So even if there was a ban on violent video games as some people propose, it wouldn't have much of an impact on me. But because of the inconclusive data on the effects of games, combined with the fact that homicide rates have dropped substantially in the past 20 years, leads me to believe that we shouldn't go on a witch hunt just yet. So those are just a few of my thoughts on if violent video games cause violence in the real world. And if you have any of your own opinions, please feel free to leave a comment below. So until next time, thanks for watching.